So we have one more session. We have one more session before our break, and then we have split into 4 tracks, and then we have our awesome reception. So I now introduce an old friend of mine, Thomas Iseler, who's going to talk to us about data and the context of S4, AI, and a number of different facets. And data is pretty darn key in this stuff. So Thomas, I'll just turn things over to you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, my friend.
Don't forget the flagpole.
Photo after.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for staying for the exciting topic of data. My name is Thomas Iseler. I've been in the SAP space since way too long. I don't even know exactly remember anywhere when, but it started with the R3 rollout. I was at SAP for many years, and then I've been with a bunch of SAP partners. And for the last 10 years, I have enjoyed myself in the data space. And I think when I look at data, data covers a broad spectrum. It's from the most afterthought thing in every SAP project that is done at the very end often, and that is done manually, to being the basis for AI. So in my opinion, nobody cares about data when you start thinking about an S4 migration or a carve-out or a merger to, how do you do AI without data? And my goal today is to show you that this company called DMI, who I work for, with their platform GFS, has actually developed a solution to take some of these headaches related to data away from you and do a lot of what some of my previous speakers have talked about before. Number one, providing a platform, making decisions for how to approach S4, or what Jason Porterfield said, how do we get things faster? How do we move from one release, from one version to the next faster? Through automation. How do we accomplish that with automation versus manual tasks in a better way? The platform is called GIFs, which is what I will generally refer to. And we use GIFs, and I will get into more details, for migration of data, historization of data, and the other big use case is what we call the carve-outs or the mergers. And throughout my presentation, since you might know or be aware of some other tools in that space, I will emphasize some of the differences between this GIS platform and some of the other tools out there. And one is right here on that first slide. Most other tools, if not all other tools in that SAP space, are for SAP data. So moving ECC data to S4 or archiving SAP data. GIS is the only platform that is able to handle non-SAP data and SAP data when you want to move to S4. So typically a customer that moves to S4 not only retires or moves some SAP data, ECC data to S4, but they typically also in that same breath then or same project will take other older legacy systems that might be non-SAP and move that data and those objects and those transactions also over to S4. So number one, it's SA for SAP data and non-SAP data. And then I thought, how better to kick the session off with an architect quote. This is a gentleman from Switzerland working on the corporate headquarters for the CTO office. And he's asking a very important question when it comes to migrations, like which data do I take and which data do I leave behind? And he has learned about GIFs, and he thinks he has figured out the answer to it. And before we get into how we do that and answer that question, just a couple of quick words about DMI. It's a Swiss headquartered company that is basically the owner of this platform. And the surprising thing most of the time when I present and talk to partners and customers in the US is, why don't we know about DMI? Why don't we know about GIFs? Because when I get to this slide, it becomes obvious the company and the product has been around for 26 years. It was actually started when SAP did the R2 to R3 migrations. This is when all that started. The initial main focus when GIS was created was around the retirement of the R2 data and the retirement of the R2 systems. That has evolved a lot over the years, but that's where all started. We have done over 2,000 projects and implementations over those 26 years. And only over the last couple of years, we actually have come to the US and started promoting, marketing, and selling, implementing, using the product over here as well. And the only other thing I briefly want to mention, we are working very closely with partners, larger SIs, smaller SIs. Some are mentioned on here, like Accenture, DXC, Deloitte, Capgemini, Infosys. There's not more space to mention more. There's a bunch of smaller SIs. We're also working with some other technology partners when it comes to the overall scope of automation and deployment of SAP or move of S4. We're working with our good friends from LeapGrade. I don't know if Rob is in the room or if he's at his booth outside, but we have our booths outside next together. So there's a bunch of partners. And that's basically, very briefly, the history of DMI, 26 years, 2,000 projects, a lot of partners that are being trained and have resources available to implement and work with GIFs. Here's a brief overview of some of selected customers. I think you all pick up on the logos pretty quickly. You see there's some pretty significant US names on there, like GE, Lafarge Holcim, and so forth. And we're going to get into some more customer examples later. What is the biggest difference of the GIFs platform? There's one big difference. And the one big difference that is the way we look at your data and the way that our customers look at their data. When you talk about an S4 migration, typically you're thinking about greenfield, brownfield, or the selective migration. And then you try to figure out which data sets and which years of data and which amounts of data you're going to bring over from the old system to the new system. We try to make it very simple for you. The one question we're going to ask you is, what are your open items and what are your master data? And then we call the rest historical data. Everything that's not open items or master data, we call historical data. And the difference in our approach in general is that when we do a migration to S4 or a carve-out, we only move, and we recommend to only move the open items and the master data. And we recommend to put all of the historical data, which is typically around 90% or maybe even more, into our so-called GIF server. And then you're going to ask, okay, why does that make sense? Because now all that historical data that I need for lots of reports and for lots of transactions is in the GIF server. The reason that works is because we have built through an SAP standard interface an integration between S4 and the GIF server. So when you pull up a report or pull up a transaction in SAP and your selection criteria includes historical data, it will show up just as if it was actually within S4. The user won't know the difference. The biggest difference for you is that instead of keeping some of your historical data in your old legacy systems and paying for the application, the database, the hardware, and the resources to maintain all of that, now all of that can be shut down, and all of that can be moved over to the GIF server. And on average, the cost savings annually for doing that is between 75 to 80% of the cost of the legacy system per legacy system. So that's a lot of cost savings. And we have plenty of customers, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in a little bit more detail, where they justified and paid for a large portion of their S4 project just by retiring their old legacy systems. What does that do? I mentioned the 80% number, the reduction of IT operational costs for the legacy systems. The other thing, by taking less data from your legacy systems to your S4 system, is that you save about 50% of the cost for the migration project, and you save about 50% of your time for the migration project. Two big numbers. And then the other big thing, which is different, when we move the historical data to the GIF server, we do that in the original format. So you keep all of your original formats of that data. Nothing gets changed. It gets stored on GIFs. So if you have any lookups for legal purposes or reporting purposes or whatever, none of that data is unchanged. It's completely the original data. You can look it up. There's also no conversion of that data in other file formats like HTML, which blows up the size of the database. None of that. It's the original formats. And the same conversion rules that we use to migrate your open items and your master data over to the S4 system are applied to the data on the GIF server when it's used on the flight for a lookup in S4. This is what it looks like once your data is in GIFs. You are on a Fiori screen in SAP, you're looking up something. Here comes your, in a non-Fiori screen, in a classical GUI, here comes your report back. And, unless, for the purpose of this session, we have colored the data that came from GIFs in red. But in a real system, it would just look like any other SAP data that you would have pulled up. It's not red if you use GIFs lives in an environment connected to S4. But basically what you see here is the fact that when you look up data in S4 and that data is partially stored in GIFs, it will just show up for the user just like as if they had, it was stored in the S4 environment. I mentioned Lafarge is one of our larger customers in the US. They had calculated how much money they would save by shutting down the legacy systems. And basically it's down 75% of the cost for the legacy system per year per system. A little bit more of GIFs. I mentioned already some of that. What are the main use cases that GIFs is usable for as a platform? It's obviously the move to S4 from SAP and from non-SAP. I mentioned the use case of the application retirement. Typically, we recommend it ideally to do that before you move to S4 because then you already have the cost savings. It doesn't make a difference to us if you do it after your S4 project. You want to make sure that those systems are alive a little bit, but you could make it part of your business case. There's a use case that we call right sizing or the move to the cloud. It's just a reduction of the data. Obviously, you can use the same methodology for mergers and acquisitions, for divestments, and so forth and so on. And then the other thing that is part of the platform and not part of a disconnected bundling of solution, we also have a data cleansing, data quality tool as part of the process. So when you migrate your data, the data cleansing and data quality improvements and harmonization become one little small step, quick step in the process of migrating your data from the old system to the new system. I'm going to talk about some more benefits. Some are here listed, but we're going to get in some more data. Here's another customer example. Lafarge was 75% of average cost, savings on operating legacy systems. For GE, it was 80%. We like to use the 80% number, but that's the range. How do projects happen with GIFs? What do we do when you start working with GIFs? The first thing that we recommend is a wonderful acronym that's called DRPA. It stands for Data Reduction Potential Analysis. So it's a quick, easy transport, and we do an analysis of what is the potential, what is all your historical data, and we show you in a very detailed report what would we consider historical data that could go to GIFs and you could start saving money, and what is the small amount of data that you actually need to migrate. Then after that, the actual project starts. We do another more in-depth discovery. That's step number 1 on the bottom left side, analysis. And then the second step is already the download of all of the historical data into the GIF server. In parallel to that, on the upper side, here what we want to illustrate is now you start working on your business applications on the process side, and 3A is a brownfield, 3B is a greenfield, and 3C is basically a selective approach. We don't care what approach you take, we support them all. We don't literally care if it's a brownfield or greenfield. Basically what we're telling you, whatever approach you take, you take the open items, you take your master data, and then the rest lives in GIFs. Then in the middle, we prepare and we transform. So we do the conversion of the data so that they meet the new requirements of the new transactions and the new business objects. And then comes a very important step. We prepare for the data upload back into S4. And here's one other big differentiator. When we give the data back to S4, we do it through the SAP Data Migration Cockpit. We don't write directly, like many other tools do, into the database or into the table, but we give the data back to the SAP Migration Cockpit, which is obviously much safer and much less risky versus loading or trying to write into tables and databases. Plus, it provides an additional validation by SAP and the mechanisms that are available in the Migration Cockpit. The benefit of, other than the risk and the safety, is that when you use GIFs, because of the upload in the Migration Cockpit where there's tables, we use less than half of the test cycles to get the data over there. And that, again, is a major factor in the time savings and the cost saving of the project. And then, obviously, there's more things once you go into operation mode, and I will talk about that a little later. Here is sort of like a summary slide, and I think you're going to get that all in the handout, I'm pretty sure. Some of the challenges, but basically the key benefits, another key benefit that I haven't mentioned yet, is because of the much smaller amount of data that you actually move in from the old systems to your new systems, you won't have a downtime challenge. A lot of these larger projects have major downtime challenges, like when do we do the cutover? When do we do the final cutover? Is it a weekend? Is it a week? How much data is it? Because our recommendation and our approach and what our customers are doing, we're only really converting a small amount of open ISO and master data. We don't have that downtime issue. And then the other things we basically talked about, we don't load into the table. We do it via the application layer, via the migration cockpit. Your overall database will be shrunk by 80 to 90%. Migration cost goes down. Cleansing effort goes down, because we only cleanse the data that actually needs to be cleansed, that goes over into S4, and not the whole mess, which could be 6, 9, 12 months major projects. And the operational costs go down, and you will always have access to all data at all times from your S4 system through the GIF server. Couple of quick things before we get into a couple more so like the operational side and some additional smaller use cases and customer examples. We have a booth out there. So my colleagues are in the back. One is there, JM. Maybe raise your hand real quick. And then Mr. Pfister, Tom Pfister, over here. We have a booth out there. We would be happy to talk to you more. The left QR code is our web page. The right QR code is our presence in the SAP store, in the SAP App Store, which is one of our ways how we work very closely with SAP and SAP account executives together. I can mention here that we are in the process of upgrading ourselves from the App Store to the endorsed business application or solution process, but that's a longer process. So for now, find us in the App Store. And with that, I would like to. Okay, here's another customer example from BMW. Basically, they said instead of putting all the data into the in-memory database, they found that GIFs is a much smarter way to store all of their historical data. Once you migrate it, there's, in my opinion, 2 other main use cases for GIFs that are important. Obviously, once you start using your S4 system, the S4 system will start growing and growing and growing. So we have integrated with SAP archiving and the ADK files to basically move that data on a continuous basis back into the GIF server and make it available there again. So, you use the SAP standard methodology for archiving an ongoing process. We grab the ADK files, make them available in the GIF server, and now they become available part of the data that's accessible from S4. And the other one I think is very important is the retention management. The way we handle the data that is on the GIF server, there's all kinds of retention management functionality so that data amount is controlled as well. And that's also, other than that we providing the relevant data and the quality data in a fast way available for any potential AI use case, this is also actually one of the examples of where we use AI technology today for retention management. There will be a whole lot more announcements around the summer for other AI applications around GIFs, but this is one example of our early adoption of AI. Another customer example here, and you can see that ABB uses GIFs to retire the system, and then that way they can have them available for audits and other business access, and happy customer there. We work in at least 3 or 4 ways very closely together with SAP. RISE is one example. We're part of a RISE technology automation toolset that SAP recommends for the move to S4 and for the move to the cloud. One way that's manifested, there's a so-called SAP Raft. That's a service offering around RISE and how to move to RISE. And for the category of data management, we are a partner solution in there where from discover, prepare, explore, and so forth and on, we basically, RISE is providing our solution as a service, as a software service as part of the RISE offering here. And then the other thing, one other area where we're working very closely with SAP together is the so-called Customer Evolution Program. Those are big supporters and partners of ours. And one thing we're doing together with the Customer Evolution Program is we're doing a first workshop in middle of April, roughly here in Newtown Square, for SAP customers that are still on ECC and are either thinking, considering, planning, trying to figure out, similar to what Ranjit presented earlier, how to get from ECC to S4. And this will be one of the workshops on most likely April 15th, where we're going to talk or tackle specifically, in addition to the general roadmap and recommendations of SAP, but also the data topic. There's a QR code at the bottom. Basically, that goes to Femke. Femke sits over there. She is part of the Evolution Program. And then basically, she will send you an invitation to that workshop. There's also on our booth is a flyer that has that QR code as well. Same for the App Store, same for our webpage. So if you missed the QR code, you just can come to our booth. All of these 3 QR codes are over there. And then one third area that actually I don't have a slide on, but the speaker just before from Cloud ALM, talked about Tricentis and the integration there. We are nowhere close to the level of integration Tricentis has accomplished, but we're working on a first integration with Cloud ALM as well, with SAP Cloud ALM as part of their project management scope. And the goal is to announce that later this year when SAP Cloud ALM does their big conference. So that's another cooperation with SAP. This is a couple of reference customers here. In addition to the quick quotes, Holle is a Swiss company. That's not completely surprising considering that our headquarters are in Switzerland. But the main reason I shared this slide, even so that's not a US customer, is because they did the whole S4 migration in just 3 months. And they worked on 2 years trying to figure out how to do it. They failed. And then when they finally learned about GIFs, and they got it all done, and then all of a sudden in 3 months, their migration project was done and over. So we're, of course, very happy and very proud, so we're happy to share that. Novartis is another pretty well-known brand name globally, and I think the interesting aspect here is they did a carve-out to combine it with an S4 migration and leverage GIFs for that. Energy Transfer, one of our larger US customers, large in the sense of what they've done with us. It started as one ERP, ECC retirement project as part of an S4 migration. And in the meantime, they have retired over 200 of their legacy application from years and years of mergers and acquisitions, and they're continuously using GIFs for each of those retirement projects. HP, did a large project with us on the retirement consolidation side for their S4HANA project. What do they say here specifically? Yeah, basically, they're using GIFs for storing all that historical data and providing access. Ahead is another US-based customer, retirement, and then right-sizing and move to the cloud project. And then this is another perfect example, South African customer, another very quick project that did migration to S4 and retirement all in one in just a couple of months. Where am I on time? Good. The analysts, in the meantime, have picked up on us. I think these are two interesting quotes by the analyst. They call for going to S4HANA, they call it game-changing. And for retirement of systems, they call just the ideal solution. What else we got? This is, in some ways, Femke's boss at a much higher level. He is a customer evolution program colleague from the Waldorf, from the headquarters organization, and they have spent a lot of time learning and diving into the capabilities. And they have found that for what their task there is to move ECC customers to S4, that this is really a game changer in the sense of it can accelerate the process significantly. Here's another customer, basically in the sense of IT consolidation, application portfolio reduction. They are very happy using GIST for that. I don't know, some of you might have seen Andreas Gresser around here. Ex-SAP colleague. Is he somewhere in the room? No, not in the room. He has written about GIST in the sense of the data weaver and what it provides as a platform, also going forward into the direction of AI. And then there's in at least Europe, pretty well-known magazine. It's called E3, and they have written a lot about GIST as well. Let's see. Those are our contact details. Jean-Marc in the back here, myself, Thomas, and Jean-Marc, for any questions or information you need. And then just in case you wanted that QR code to the SAP store. And what I really wanted to leave you with is those 4 numbers on the right side. When you think about S4 migration, 50% lower cost, 50% project time reduction, 80% reduction in operational cost for your legacy retirement. The data on the GIST server is always compliant and secure, and it's basically your ideal basis together with the clean data in the S4 for your future, for your AA projects, and anything related to that. I think that was it. Yes, that was it. All right.
Great.
I don't know. I was faster than I allotted to.
But it's all good.
Maybe there's a question or two. I don't know if we do that here today, or
not so much in these live stream breaks.
Right.
But stay on stage because you can't leave before we take a flag photo. I learned my lesson from the last one. So just hang tight So just a couple things before you get up. Hang on just a second. So just a couple things for this afternoon. So we'll break into sort of 3 tracks. The cloud. We'll break into 4 tracks actually. The last session around Cloud ALM that was going to be in here is going to go flip to a virtual session. But in here, instead, in the auditorium, we're going to have Ranjit talk about the essential tool set for planning migrating to S4. So Ranjit is going to do more of a show and tell demo of showing things versus slides. So we thought we'd switch it up a little bit. And let's see, and all the rest of the program is inherently the same. So again, reminder, some of the other sessions, there's the AI session that will be up in sort of solutions on the 2nd floor. We have a full number of panel sessions that'll happen up in Demo Room A, building involving your EA practice as well as involving EA inside an S4 transformation. And we have the folks from Lemongrass doing something very important topics. How many of you, by the way, FinOps? How many of you are dealing with FinOps inside your organizations? You know what? There should be more hands up. Because if you don't have FinOps, you sure as heck will someday. So you should probably learn to understand more FinOps, and architects need to understand more about FinOps. And we also have a session from our friends here at Leap Great talking about automating S4 transformations. So just a bit of a teaser alert on that. We're going to have a big focus, probably virtual over a series of stream on different topics on state-of-the-art and how to automate S4 transformations today with a few different players. So like I said earlier this morning, S4 has been around since 2015. There are a lot of tools that can be used today to greatly accelerate an S4 transformation. So LibreGrade is going to talk a bit about that, and we're going to have a bit of a stream in around that. And we have an auditorium right after break. The famous Chet Harder is going to talk about Signavio and the next generation business process management. So, I have one more thing before the flag photo, Martin. You come up on stage, though. So I've had 223 requests asked about the slides throughout the course of the day, one-on-one requests. And I thought I should probably tell everybody, since I'll save the other 100 and some asking me. So you will get the slides. Try and aim to push the slides out Thursday or Friday of this week, most likely Friday. But I'll tell you more tomorrow on another layer on top of the slides, which is pretty cool, involving on other different things that we're doing to help generate an ebook for you folks. So that's a teaser alert for tomorrow. And don't forget as well, a couple things for this evening. The reception is going to be 5:30 to 7:30 in the cafe at the end of the hallway. Get the flag ready, Thomas. And we're going to have our giving away 150 copies of this book on corporate explorers. So Andrew Binns is going to talk tomorrow about adopting a corporate explorer mindset for architects. So, and we have a great speaker. He spoke at a few events for me, and we have a number of copies of his book. And you folks heard from Wendy Keene today. We've got a number. Wendy's going to be also, Andrew and Wendy are both going to be signing books at the session tonight. And we have more, BTP and beer, and we have the BTP Diamond Game.
And we're going to have Andreas Grasser book about the data weaver at our booth tomorrow.
So are you ready for the last flag photo before the, no, we're doing one with Chet later, but before the break.
Okay, smile. Martin, smile.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
We'll see you back here at 3:50. Yeah, there.